Hi guys, welcome back to another hands-on video by Mio Lessons. I'm Matt and today I'm here with the Fujifilm X-T10, and the X-T10 is basically an X-T1 but slightly smaller with a few features missing, but overall it has the same image quality because it has the same sensor and most of the performance are exactly the same, including the autofocus system. The Fujifilm X-T10 body is slightly smaller than the Fujifilm X-T1, but also the Fujifilm X-100T. And actually, if you cut off this hump here, basically the size is almost the same as the Fujifilm X-30, which is a compact camera. So I was saying before, there's a few things that the X-T10 misses in comparison to the X-T1. One of these, it's a weather sealing, and also by using it, they can feel that it's a bit more plasticky and the button and the dial are not as good as the Fujifilm X-T1. Other differences include a built-in pop-up flash that you can quickly activate with the lever here on the top left. It's actually the design of the flash is quite good because you really don't notice it when it's closed. You don't have the ISO dial on the left, but instead you have a drive dial, which is, in my opinion, a very good solution. You can basically change between single, continuous low, continuous high. You have two bracketing options, so you can, for example, assign exposure bracketing on the first one and let's say white balance bracketing on the second one. Same goes for the two advanced mode, and you also have multiple exposure and panorama. So all these functions can be easily accessed by using this dial. There's another switch that's interesting, is the auto switch here next to the shutter speed dial. And basically when you turn that on, the camera goes in full auto mode. So that can be interesting for beginner and amateurs that might be interesting in buying a more capable camera, but that might feel a little bit reluctant in using all the manual dial like the shutter speed dial or the aperture ring on the lens first. So again, it just shows that this camera is not aimed only to enthusiasts but also to amateur. On top, in addition to the drive mode, of course, we have the shutter speed mode, the same one that we can find in all the Fujifilm cameras really, and the exposure compensation. Actually, this one is the only dial I don't really like. It's a little bit hard to turn and to quickly and precisely change. We also have one front and one rear dial that are made of plastic and good enough to use. The front one can be pressed as well, and actually when you press, it activates a function that you can assign via the camera menu. The camera has 7 function buttons, so you have the front dial here that can be pressed. There is a function button here, there are the 4 buttons of the control pad, and you have also the video recording button that can be customized. Another downgrade from the X-T1 has to do with the viewfinder. The viewfinder on the X-T10 is the same viewfinder found on the X-T2, which is a good viewfinder, good resolution. It has actually the same time lag as the Fujifilm X-T1 viewfinder, which is a very good thing. But of course, the X-T1 viewfinder, as you can see on the image, is really larger. That's one of the best characteristics of that camera actually. So of course, if you use the X-T1 and then use the X-T10, you miss a little bit that viewfinder. If the X-T10 is your first Fujifilm camera or you haven't used the X-T1, then you won't feel that difference. But still, the X-T10 viewfinder is a good viewfinder. Another nice little detail, you can actually screw a soft release on the shutter button, something that you can also do with the X-T2, with the X-100T. I don't know why on the X-T1 Fujifilm put a simple and classic shutter button, but I guess that a lot of people complain there as well. So on the reader, the button layout is very similar to the X-T1 as well. You only miss the focus assist button that you can find on the X-T1. The LCD screen can be a tilt as well. It's 45 degrees down and 90 degrees up. The SD card door is accessed from the bottom where the battery compartment is. And the one thing to complain about a little bit is that the tripod mount is basically too close to the battery ports. So basically, if you use a tripod and then have to change the battery, you have to unmount the tripod plate. That's something that happens also on the X-T1. and I wish that they could just move this tripod mount a little bit close to the center here, so they could actually be at the same level of the lens, and that way you could more easily open and close the battery compartment. So how this camera feels when using it after a few days? I must say the small size is nice because the camera is really light, so you can easily carry it around your neck and you won't feel tired after an entire day of walking around with your camera. The grip is good. It's not perfect, and I admit that sometimes you have to really hold it tight, especially on the rear. And if you mount some very compact lenses like the 27mm f2.8, that's a very compact camera, and it really embraced the concept of mirrorless cameras being small. If you use bigger lenses, however, I think that you can start to see that the grip is a little bit limited. Here I have the 18-55 f2.8 to f4, which is one of the two kit lenses that will be available with this camera, and with this lens it feels really good. It's very well balanced. I also used the 16mm 1.4 on this camera as well, and the grip was still good because the 16mm is not too big as well. We also tested briefly with the new 90mm f2, and that's about the limit in my opinion. I mean, if you start to use a longer telephoto lens like the 55-200 or the 50-240, and that is the biggest Fujifilm lens right now, I think that the grip on the camera really becomes limited. Fujifilm also designed an optional landscape grip that you can attach at the bottom, and that will certainly enhance the grip on the camera. So again, it's small, so in a way it's good, in another way it's bad if you want to use bigger lenses. So the camera is very similar to the X-T10 and actually other X series cameras concerning image quality. It's the same sensor as the X-T10, the X-T2, the X100T, the X100S, so same image quality, same low light capabilities, same picture profile including the classic chrome film simulation mode. And so the only real thing that is new on this camera is the two new autofocus mode called zone and wide tracking. This is the first camera that has these two new autofocus mode. It will come on the X-T10 as well via firmware update. So let's talk about the autofocus mode on this camera. To be honest, I didn't have time to test it in depth, all these new autofocus capabilities. The time I had with the camera was limited. I'm sure I have the occasion to do more tests when the firmware update for the X-T10 will be available. But as for now, what I can say is, first, with autofocus single mode, I haven't seen any worth differences with the X-T10 or the X-T2. It works well, it's quick, it's not the quickest autofocus among mirrorless cameras. In low light situation, I found the autofocus fast and reactive. Focus precision wasn't always accurate as in daylight, but I certainly saw a small improvement over the X-T10 and X-T2. In continuous autofocus, the camera has the same performance as the X-T10. Actually, you can shoot in 8 frames per second in continuous mode. The difference is the buffer. The X-T10 buffer is really more limited than the X-T10 and fills up very quickly, especially if you're shooting RAW plus JPEG. But even with JPEG, it's not that great. So let's see the first of the two new AF mode. The first one is called Zone AF, and what the camera allows you to do is basically to choose a group of AF points. They can be 3x3, 5x5 or 5x3, and the camera will then choose automatically the best autofocus point according to where your subject is, as long as it is within that zone you selected. That's interesting because I remember when I tried the X-T10 for sports photography, my only option really was to use the largest IF point possible and to keep my subject exactly at the center of my frame where my autofocus point was. And the reason for that is that because the phase detection points are at the center of the sensor, and that's where the autofocus will give you the best performance. With this zone IF mode, I can have more room for errors when I'm tracking my subject, and the camera picks automatically the best IF point within that zone, so you have a little bit more versatility. In the first test I did, the X-T10 did well. It was fast in keeping track of the subject.
Focus accuracy wasn't always 100% precise, and I actually had a few shots that were slightly out of focus.
So that's a nice addition, I think, that makes the autofocus more precise and gives the user more option when shooting in continuous mode and when shooting some action. The second mode is called wide tracking.
If you use it in single focus mode, the performance is similar to the multi-plus mode found on other X cameras. The camera automatically picks one or multiple live points on the whole frame. But if you switch to continuous focus mode, that's where things become more interesting, because you get the possibility to choose where the autofocus should start tracking. You simply move the single AF point on your frame until it is on the element you want the camera to start tracking. During my first tests, I was actually surprised to see how good and fast it is during tracking a moving subject. It isn't perfect, and sometimes it can confuse the subject with some elements in the background, but what I saw was definitely encouraging.
This mode is the closest mode this camera has with what we know of 3D tracking on other cameras and other systems, including DSLRs. There is something similar on the X-30, but a function like this was never implemented in the APC cameras by Fujifilm until now.
Of course, it will be more interesting to test further with more action, faster subjects, and some sports photography as well.
Last thing is the camera has a face detection mode like other Fujifilm cameras, but now they also implemented an eye detection. You can choose left or right or both eyes in addition to the face detection. And again, my first impression is it works well in very good light, and when the subject and the person is close enough to the camera so it can feel a good portion of your frame. If the light is less good or your subject is slightly more in the shadows, it hesitates a lot more. So that's it for today. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this hands-on video. If you have any question about the camera, make sure to write it in the comment section of this video, or you can also check our Fujifilm X-T10 review on mirrorlesson.com. Don't hesitate to share it, and don't hesitate to ask us anything about this camera or other mirrorless cameras on our website. See you next time. Bye bye.